Hey guys, welcome back to another episode and welcome back to the channel. I'm aboard DD-661 USS Kidd here in beautiful Baton Rouge, Louisiana on the Mississippi River. Thought I'd give you guys a little tour today. I know you guys enjoyed the video I did of the submarine in Mobile. Didn't really get a chance to finish doing one of the USS Alabama, but hopefully this will make up and I hope you guys enjoy it. Next, we are here in board one of the 5-inch 38 gun turrets. The 5-inch 38 was the main armament for most destroyers, and a lot of cruisers and battleships had them as secondary armaments. These shells could fire pretty good range. You had a variety of different types of ammunitions for them as well, including high explosive, armor piercing if I'm not mistaken, and even illumination rounds. As you can see, most of the ship was armed with a lot of depth charges, as you can well. Some of them, like aft, would roll off. I've seen some that would actually shoot off the sides. Now basically you would set the counter clock form, and depending on the depth or fathoms that you were trying to destroy said enemy submarine, it would then detonate around or near the hull or conning tower of said submarine. Next up, we have the 20mm Oerlikon anti-aircraft gun. So these originally came into service in 1937. As you can see, there are 2-cylinder drums on top for ammunition. Each hold 60 rounds apiece of high explosive ammunition. If you'll come with me, I'll show you a quick storeroom here. You have to forgive me. As you can see, red-tipped ammunition. Each drum would be set in here, and then the gunners would end up moving them and setting them to the block. As you can see, this mount actually has no gun in it, but there's many on the sides, there's a few forward and a couple aft as well. As you can see above, there's a 40mm Bofors anti-aircraft gun as well. So in here, as you can see, we have a damage control locker. Now a lot of times this would have contained fire extinguishers, axes, any forms of pumps. You would have had pretty much anything that you could use to shore up a ship in case of fire or disorder amongst the ship. Here, you have to forgive the light, folks, but you have the medical storeroom. Anything you would have kept in here, your on-base doctors, or excuse me, on-board doctors, sorry about that, or corpsmen or pharmacist mates would have had readily available to use. Here we have the battery charging room. You have to forgive me, I know it's hard to see, folks. And here, folks, we have the emergency radio room. As you can see, high voltage. This seems to be a room in which I'm sure you could send any form of distress signal in case something was knocked out on the bridge, perhaps. Alright folks, and now we've entered one of my favorite places on the ship. As you can see, we are in the galley. This is where all the meals, both breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and even mid-rats, would have been made for the crew. And as you can see in here, we've got a storeroom and possibly what could have been a scullery, if I'm not mistaken, where dishes would have been washed. I personally like the galley, as you can see, because I love to eat, and I know the crew has been working a long shift, or they've just gotten off a watch. A hot meal definitely was a welcome treat. Next up, folks, it looks to be the officer's mess and possible wardroom. I'm sure they could have changed it unless the wardroom's further and I just haven't found it. This is definitely where officers would have came to have their meals, and stewards would have come and served them as well. All right, folks, we're forward on the bow now. As you can see, looking straight down the center line, we have the forward 5-inch guns. As you can see, you have two 40mm Bofors. I think we have two single mount 20mm Oerlikons up near the bridge, and of course we have our rangefinder for the guns. Above is all the radar on the masts. And of course the beautiful Mississippi River, nice and brown like chocolate milk, yummy. Next we have the steward's berthing. This was a bunk space during World War II for black crew members. They served as stewards mates, preparing and serving meals for officers and maintaining the officers' rooms and wardroom as well. Folks, we have the rest of the galley. Now, as you can see, there's nothing wrong with a good bit of chow. Like I said, you definitely need a lot to feed a very hungry and very, very busy crew with a lot of watch standings and so forth and so on. Now, this right here seems to be an ice cream plant by General Electric, good old GE. Very, very, very old school in terms of mechanics. I really would love to see this thing in action. It's quite quite the treat to see this. We're going to keep moving on here just a second. There we go. Going to head into here. Now, we have finally found the scullery. Like I said, you have to forgive me for earlier, that was just a storeroom. Here it actually is. This would make more sense. You come through, put your trays right in there, and send it on down the line to get steam cleaned. Oh yeah. Now here's a room I'm very familiar with. This is the crew berthing, and at this point, like I said, one of the most famous things on here is that their coffee pot. Tell you one thing, the Navy flat runs on coffee. Never wash a coffee mug. As you can see, also, this is a multi-use facility, basically. With this being the cruise mess deck, like I said, they can eat in here. They can also act as additional berthing. There may be further berthing down as we traverse the rest of the ship. Stay tuned. Through the hatchway we go, and as I promised, even more berthing. You gotta have quite a bit of racks for crew members, even though this is a small boy. Sometimes some of these ships would have to hot rack, just kind of like submarines. Somebody be working a shift, standing on watch. Somebody would be in there, and then as soon as they were off, they would switch and jump right in with them. As you can see, we go through the hatchway here. We got even more berthing. You can't go wrong with a lot of racks. Ooh, it is hot in here, let me tell you. We have now finally reached the Chief's mess. Now, as you can see, it's kind of small, which means I'm sure the complement of senior enlisted aboard was actually quite small. So you can see back there is a bunch of knot tying displays, marlin spike as we call it. Like I said, what did I tell you about the Chief's mess in the Navy? It runs on coffee. Next, we seem to have the Chief's berthing as well. A little more space. As you can see, these mattresses have a whole lot more cushion than those little green ones that your junior enlisted probably would have slept on, and it keeps going and going and going. Now, here's the cool thing. We're also in one of the shell rooms in which you would have put the shell in one of these elevators. Let me navigate through here real quick. And it would have sent it up to inside the turret of one of the main 5-inch 38s. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we've reached officers' country. As you can see, rank really does have its privileges. Usually 2 to 3 to a stateroom. Seems pretty spacious. The mattresses look about the same, if not even better than the ones that the Chiefs would have slept on. And seems to be almost 2 to 3 maybe officers per stateroom, if I'm not mistaken. It looks like 3 bunks high, so yeah, it should be about 3 officers in here, if I'm not mistaken. All right, next up we have, hanging around here, we have the XO stateroom. Now, the XO was answered directly to the skipper. He was directly in charge of administrative duties and keeping the ship running smoothly day to day. So all your triad, you had your CO, you had your executive officer, and you had your command master chief. So this would be the executive officer's stateroom. Next up, we have the CIC, Combat Information Center. So the cool thing about this was it serves as the ship's radar tracking room. Basically, it plotted the location of nearby ships, submarine, and other aircraft, and gave the command staff a constant tactical big picture of the surrounding environment that they would have tracked with the radars. All right, next up, I know it's kind of hard to see, but we have the small arms locker. So basically, you would have rifles, pistols, and submachine guns in here. As you can see, there's quite a few 1911s and what looks to be 1903 A3 Springfields. I do not see any Thompsons or BARs or grease guns. I'm not sure if they were somewhere else on board or they're just not in this locker, but this is where all your small arms would have been if you needed to defend the ship or guard someone, perhaps maybe in the brig, for example. Next up, we have the navigation room. So basically this room was the ship's quartermasters. They tracked the ship's position through dead reckoning and piloting. You even had celestial navigation and electronic navigation. They also maintained navigational instruments that kept correct time and stayed stayed informed on protocol for national armed services and foreign customs. That's right, folks. Up next is the radio room. Basically, this space contains radio transmitters and receivers. It allows the ship to communicate at long ranges, and then the operator sat at the typewriters, as you can see, aka mills as they called them, and recorded encrypted Morse code messages, and the communications officer deciphered them for the commanding officer. Right, next up we have the sonar room. Now these guys were the eyes and the ears of the boat, so to speak, underwater when tracking enemy submarines. They would have listened for a ping. Once it came back, it would have told them the general direction and location of said enemy submarine in the distance. Next up, we have the skipper's cabin. I know it's a bit hard to see, you have to forgive me. This is where the skipper would have stayed when he was on the bridge. There's also a cabin below when they were in port for the skipper as well. This is where the commanding officer of the ship would have lived. We have the very heart and soul of this ship. We have the pilot house and or bridge. Now basically, the steering wheel is known as the helm. The helmsman steered the ship based on orders from the officer of the deck, or OOD if you will. He stayed on the course using the gyro compass repeater with a magnetic compass. So basically, it was a brass column with 2 handles, and it's the engine order telegraph. And then the lee helmsman uses to send speed change orders to the engine rooms and fire rooms, so changing the speed of the ship and everything, how much RPMs they would have pumped out. Changes were not instantaneous though, as the valves had to be adjusted with steam temperatures and pressures raised and lowered. So exactly didn't stop on a dime, if you will. If you ever wonder where you got to go to the bathroom, well, here it is, ladies and gentlemen. We have now entered the head, as we call it in the Navy. It looks to be, we've got some urinals here. We've got some sinks there. We got a few showers here and there. But here's the best part. Let's say you got to take a dump, right? Well, I hope you like shitting into a trough, pardon the language. But yeah, here you go. 3 seats on that side. Whew, hope you're comfortable. But yeah, usually there is no dividers in a lot of these older ships. So if you had to use the restroom, well, there you go. Next up, we have the signal bridge. As you can see here, like I said, this is where you would have used to run your pennants or flags up, depending on what the occasion was, what you were doing, who was on board, if there was a foreign ship, whether you were trying to make contact with someone else. As you can see, there are the large searchlights to illuminate enemy shore batteries or enemy vessels, but also you had the signal lamps here that you would have sent signal codes with, using that direction, if you will, an up and down motion to basically send almost like a Morse code, but it was in the form of a light. As you can see, there's another mount here as well. Walk a little bit further here. Once again, we're back on the bridge, facing, we're facing forward here. We're facing the bow of the ship. And of course, here's the 5 inches as well. Again, right below us is another 40mm Bofors gun as well. Next up, we have the 40mm Bofors anti-aircraft gun. Now, these were produced from 1932 till present, actually. This is the dual. Most ships have dual purpose. Some actually have quads, as you can see, barrels that I mean. You would have basically put the case ammunition up top, and it would have fed down and was firing. I can't really do it with my fingers, but it would have basically reciprocated up and down, and fired almost, if you will, an airburst shell as an anti-aircraft screen. Next up, we have the 10 by 21 inch 533mm torpedo tubes. As you can see, there's a complement of 4 here. We're about midship, right below the stack. And you want to talk about firing off a salvo of these bad boys. Most Fletcher class destroyers like this had a complement of these 5 torpedo tubes. They could be fired port or starboard, as well. As you can see, the housing up top there. And you want to talk about scaring a bunch of enemy ships. These bad boys wreaked havoc in the Pacific, not just with Japanese ships, but also with US ships, and some British ships could fire them as well. They're an absolute terrifying deterrent. Imagine standing here on the starboard side, watching a torpedo of that length flying at you, and there's nothing you can do about it but try to zigzag, you know, serpentine, if you will, and it plows a hole into you. I mean, a ship of this size, you can forget it. You absolutely can. There'd be nothing left. I know my state's battleship, USS North Carolina, was hit by I-19 by a torpedo, in which it pretty much bashed like an 18 by 21 foot hole in it. It may have been bigger, I may be mistaken, but yeah, you want to talk about damage to a ship of that size? Oh yeah, compared to something of this magnitude, there'd be nothing left. It'd split it down to the keel. Goodness gracious. Last but not least, guys, as you can see, we've got 2 aft dual 20mm. We also have our we have our depth charges that would have rolled off the rack. We have our aft 5-inch, another aft 5-inch, and then another aft 40mm Bofors as well. So I think that is that's about it. I unfortunately cannot get down to the engine room. There's quite a few rooms that were blocked off, unfortunately. So with that being said, let me spin the old camera around here. I want to thank you guys for tuning in. As always, like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, share the video with people, let them know. I'm trying my best here. I really am, with limited resources I have. So as always, keep charging. I'll see you in the next video.